Hi, this is Tisch Aitken, and December 4th, 2024. This is a huge week. We've had a few huge weeks, definitely November 19th when Pluto returned to the sign of Aquarius, where it will be nonstop through, March 8th of 2043. That's a huge deal. That's a really big deal. But Mars is going to retrograde this week, and it's going to retrograde on December 6th at 6:33 p.m. Eastern Standard Time at 6 degrees and 11 minutes of the fixed fire sign of Leo. Mars retrogrades once every 22 months. Let's just say once every 2 years. And the last time it was retrograde was, I believe, was October 31st of 2022. And then it stationed direct in January. It was in Gemini at that time. And that's where Jupiter is right now. It's in Gemini. And that deals with siblings and local environment. But Mars is retrograding this time in the sign of Leo. And Mars in Leo is very, it's very passionate. Leo is a fixed fire sign that rules the heart. It's about confidence. It's royalty. It's a lot of performers, and people with a lot of confidence often have a lot of Leo in their charts. It is a sign of love and passion and creativity. It's the most creative of the fire signs. But it's retrograding in Leo, and it's going to oppose Pluto on January 3rd. This is the second time. The first time was on November 3rd. Mars was not yet retrograde, and it was in the sign of Cancer, where it's going to be for the majority of the retrograde. And it opposed Pluto 2 days before the election in the United States and right before Pluto changed signs. So again, Pluto ingressed back into the sign of Aquarius, where it'll be for 19 years and several months, 20 years in total. If we count last year, Pluto was dipping back and forth into the sign of Aquarius. Now it's full throttle. This is higher frequencies. These are upgrades. This is feeling like, for me, it's like feeling like I'm, I don't know how to explain it. Kind of like the old-fashioned video games where you go back and forth, back and forth. I have a client that used to do that to me with questions, and that's what my mind has been doing. And we've had lots of updates and upgrades and updates on policies for sites, and a lot to do with technology. There were some technological, well, I know Mercury's retrograde. This is a lot bigger than that, with Pluto entering the sign of technology, among other things, the sign of Aquarius. And Pluto is death and rebirth. And for all of us, we were dealing in the last few years with the last end of Pluto transiting in Capricorn, which it initially entered in January of 2008. That was the year of the financial collapse. That was the Bernie Madoff scandal. And let's see. And so then we had Saturn and Pluto meet up at the world axis, which is 22 degrees of the cardinal signs, also 0 degrees of the cardinal signs. But in this case, they met up Saturn, which is karma, restriction, responsibility, rules and regulations, met up with Pluto, death, regeneration, power, other people's money. And Saturn and Pluto met up at that world point on January 12th of 2020. And that was really in the beginning end of the pandemic. And this, during that time, we already were working in outdated systems and structures. This really finalized that process. And now we're in a new era. But with this said, Mars is how we move ahead. Mars is ambition. Mars is drive. It's passion. It is what propels you forward. And it's not easy when you begin a year with Mars retrograde. Now, in the case of January of 2023, I believe it did station by the very end of January. So it wasn't retrograde for a few months. It still was retrograde in the very beginning of the year. But this is a big deal. The North Node of Karma is transiting in Aries through January 11th. And then it's going to transit in Pisces for the next year and a half after that. So we've got the North Node in Aries, and that is the depositor of Mars. And Mars being in Leo is what makes your heart happy, what gives you courage. It reminds me of the Cowardly Lion. You have to, find, you need courage, you need your heart, you need to work from your heart. And a lot of people, pardon me, are going to feel their confidence diminished. And if you have planets, the early degrees of the fixed signs, let's see, Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius. Let's say 0 to 6 because 0 to 8 because, Mars is retrograding at 6 degrees and 11 minutes of Leo. That is on December 6th of 2024 at 6:33 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's going to return to the sign of Cancer on January 6th. It's going to station direct on April 18th, 2025. No, not April 18th. It's going to leave Cancer. Neptune is stationing too. I'll get to that in a minute, so give me a break on this. Mars is going to retrograde, station direct. It will retrograde, that's for sure. It's going to station direct on February 23rd at 17 degrees and 1 minute of the cardinal water sign of Cancer. It's crabby in Cancer. You don't want to make decisions based on your emotions. Mars represents triggers. It's what gets you. It's what makes you angry sometimes. There can be very healthy uses of anger if it's not impulsive. Mars can be very impulsive. This is not a time to be impulsive. Ideally, it's not a time to launch something new altogether in your life. There will be people that'll be looking for new jobs. That's inevitable. Not the best time to look for a new job. I remember years and years ago, I began a new job with Mars retrograde. I didn't know as much about astrology then. And somebody had posted that there was a Mars retrograde tarot special. And I'm like, wow, this is a great place for me. They're talking about tarot. But I was there for, I think, 10 months. I love my coworkers. I love the company. But my boss and I did not get along. And Mars can represent male energy, and there can be something backwards. Again, some people may not be able to avoid it. If you have your own business, do the launches after Mars retrograde. Hopefully you've been listening to me and taking actions to get it going. I know we'll all be doing things, in the new year. You can't avoid it, but if it's something really big, Mars only retrogrades once every 22 months. Out of all of the planets, it does not retrograde annually. Venus is the second slowest. It retrogrades once every 18 months, once every year and a half. It is a personal planet, like Mercury and like Venus. And Mercury retrogrades 4 times a year, and I'm fully aware that it's retrograde right now, and it's retrograde in its detriment in Sagittarius. But we have to deal with it, and then we can tweak it afterwards. Mars retrograde doesn't happen that frequently, and it is very frustrating. It's time to search within, like the Cowardly Lion. If you are the king or the queen of the forest, you've got to find the confidence within. This is not a time to really be boasting and going around and doing things. This is a time to search within how you can shine. How can you be creative? Pluto's now in Aquarius, which is ingenious energy, and we have it the next 19 years and several months. So it's going to be there a while. So this is about innovation and ingenuity like we've never seen it. And I definitely have felt the shift since Pluto entered Aquarius, and Mars is hitting my Mercury. So that's probably also, and Pluto will be hitting my Mercury pretty soon. Not yet, but another year or so. And so I feel the energy of that. And I just feel like I always describe Uranus transits, and Uranus is the modern ruler of Aquarius. Uranus, can feel like you're trying to fall asleep with all the lights on in the house, and that can be a difficult thing. So I think right now, with this retrograde, it is again a time to search within. Mars entered its shadow on October 4th when it got to 17 degrees of Cancer, where it's going to station direct on February 23rd. Mars opposed Pluto when they both were in the signs of Cancer and Capricorn at the very last degree on November 3rd, 2 days before the US election. And then they're going to oppose each other once again on January 3rd. And this will be at 1 degree of Leo and Aquarius, respectively. So with that said, that's another powwow. And I just saw something, and I agree, Rick Levine said something to the effect that if Mars didn't win the first time, Pluto will get him. And, Mars is war, and Mars is, definitely energy force, but Pluto is the higher octave of Mars. And Pluto is maybe a dwarf planet, but it packs a hell of a punch. It is not subtle in that. It can be very subtle, but when it gets you, it gets you. If you know Scorpios, if they really get you, they get you. And Mars and Pluto both rule the sign of Scorpio. Mars rules Aries, but it also rules Scorpio in ancient astrology. And then we're going to have Mars stationing direct on February 23rd, but it's not going to leave Cancer until April 18th. And we're going to have a third and final time of Mars and Pluto in opposition. This time Mars will be direct, and that will occur on April 26th. And they will be at 3 degrees of Leo and Aquarius, respectively. So that is, 3 times of it. That's a very pugilistic energy. It is definitely an aspect of war. And there are going to be a lot of people struggling with this energy because we have what's interesting about this week. We just had a magical new moon in my favorite sign for moons. The moon in Sagittarius, think of it. Jupiter is exalted in Cancer, which is ruled by the moon. And the moon in Sagittarius, it may not be in its domicile, meaning in its rulership or in its exaltation, but it has that feeling to me because Jupiter is exalted in the sign ruled by the moon. And people I know that have the moon in Sag are very joyous and they laugh from the heart. I've said this, and they just have a very generous, open, loving energy, and very adventurous energy. Well, why was I bringing that up? Oh yeah, that new moon. That new moon was part of had a grand trine in it, with Mars and the North Node and the Sun and Sag. But the idea is that the new moon also squared Saturn. And, with that, the Sun is going to square Saturn tomorrow. We're first going to have Mercury square Jupiter, and that occurs at 5:16 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And that could bring big information because Mercury is retrograde in a sign that can, Sag can really blurt out a lot of information. It can talk too much or say too much. And it is in its detriment because it rules the opposite sign of Gemini. And you've got Mercury in its detriment, and you've got Jupiter transiting in the opposite sign of Gemini. Jupiter rules Sag, therefore Jupiter in Gemini is also, in its detriment. And so that's an energy where it can be very expansive, but it could maybe in a sense mitigate the Sun square Saturn energy where you're like, well, I wanted this and I wanted that. Well, good luck. You still have to do this and this. And now Mars is about to retrograde. And last but not least, Neptune stations direct on December 7th at 6:43 p.m. Eastern Standard Time at 27 degrees and 7 minutes of the mutable water sign of Pisces. And we feel the outer planet 5 days before and 5 days afterwards. We're definitely feeling it now. I know I'm feeling very Neptunian. People have told me they're feeling really strong dreams. This could also emphasize a feeling of being lost, a feeling of depression. Definitely prophetic and psychic and intuitive energy is emphasized, but this is a dissolving energy. And it is good news that Neptune's going direct because we have a lot of planets retrograde right now, but especially Mars retrograding. Mercury will go direct on the day of the full moon on December 15th, but Mars is a bigger deal, definitely. And so we've got that Neptune energy Venus changes signs on the day of the Neptune station. Well, on December 6th, if you're on the West Coast, it's at 10:13 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and it is on December 7th at 1:13 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Venus enters Aquarius, where it will be through January 2nd. And that's a social placement, an intellectual placement of Venus, and definitely social and gregarious. But Venus meets up with Pluto at 11:18 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And that could be, intense energy. And that is intense energy. What am I saying? People that have that can be, it's a Catherine and Heathcliff type of energy. It can be very stormy. There could be breakups. But I think it's also, emphasizing the idea that this Pluto newly in Aquarius, it's going to oppose Mars 2 more times. There are growing pains in this. There are things we need to shed. Pluto is death. It is letting go of things in order to rebirth yourself and the world. So, inevitably, there's going to be a lot of intensity with that. And Ceres, which is an asteroid that represents the feminine energy, nourishing and nurturing and nourishment and the feminine energy. Ceres is also in Aquarius. So Pluto's going to hit both of those. That's an intensity. Again, saying, what do you need to let go to bring what you love to the story? And then Neptune stations direct at 6:43 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on December 7th at 27 degrees and 7 minutes of Pisces. Just like I said before, I'll say it again. That is intense too. So, this weekend, there could be breakups. There could be a lot of information we don't know about getting uncovered. Neptune is hidden information and secrets. Can be deception and lies. We've got Mercury retrograde. It's about to oppose Jupiter tomorrow. Well, that could bring big news. And Mercury retrograde can uncover things. And with Mars retrograde, mails from the past can return. Maybe work projects return, things you've done in the past. We have to keep working. We have to do that, obviously. But bear in mind that we're really not going to get the full scope of this Mars story until, so Mars opposes Pluto the third and final time on April 26th. And then it leaves Leo altogether. I believe it's June 12th. I have to remember. I'm like all over. It's in the beginning of June. So think of it. It's in these 2 signs a long time. And so we have to find ways with, Neptune at the last degree. In early January, the nodes of fate change signs. And so the North Node will be at 29 degrees of Pisces. That's right close to where Neptune is right now. Again, there is a sense of, not being in the center of attention with Pisces energy. It's about being selfless. It's about helping others. It's also a very creative sign, the most creative of the water signs, and music and selfless love and beauty and imagination. Pisces rules imagination, but a lot of people will be having trouble with mental health issues. They already are. Neptune's been at these degrees for a while, and it's not done. And so find ways to search within. How can you be more effective with how you shine? How can you bring love and open your heart to the world? Leo rules the heart chakra. When Mars returns to Cancer, there could be a lot of domestic issues, a lot of issues around real estate and family. Again, people being very crabby and moody because the moon changes signs every 2.5 days, and Mars will be defaulting and answering to the moon. Where will the moon be that day, and what's it doing? But working with your emotions, not being so emotionally reactive. And so, big week for all of us. Neptune's direct, but Mars is retrograding, and that's a bigger deal. And for a lot of us, I'd say we're feeling both. So, and the Sun square Saturn is again emphasizing that new moon. Definitely believe in hope. Jupiter rules Pisces. Saturn and Neptune are transiting on and off in Pisces through February 15th of 2026. It is the ancient ruler of Pisces. Jupiter is optimism and hope, but we have to be realistic that these are very difficult times, and there's a lot of warlike energy all over the world right now, obviously. And Mars and Pluto are in conflict 3 times in total. But what about internal anger? What about anger you're experiencing around you in everyday life? What about if you're feeling more angry in the last few years and you don't know how to channel that? This is an opportune time to re-examine how you can channel that anger, whether it's through being creative, working out, doing something for somebody else, fixing up your home, because Mars in Cancer, a lot of focus on the home, and your inner child, working on the issues of your inner child and emotional things that get dug up. Because when Mars is in Cancer, a lot of people were having old memories of things like that. So it's going to be an interesting ride. I wish you a lot of luck, and I will be back. And thank you.